My name is Rick, and while in high school and college, most people who met me got the impression that I was a computer geek. I'm not a bad-looking guy, but certainly not the best-looking guy on earth either. I'm 6 feet tall, weigh about 170 pounds, with light brown hair. I did date, and I don't remember a time when I was not interested in computers, computer programs, and computer games. Anyone who had problems with their computer knew who to go to, and that would be me. That's exactly how I met Karen, the woman who was to become my wife. It all started 7 years ago when we were both students at the University of Wisconsin, her in the legal studies area and I in the computer science area. Of course, Karen had a goal to become a corporate lawyer, and I wanted to learn more and more about computers and programs. She was having difficulty understanding her computer system and went to one of the professors in the computer science department, who in turn referred her to me. I was able to help her understand her system, and she became extremely efficient at all kinds of computer work. Also, through it all, we became friends and spent a lot of time together. Now I should tell you about Karen. She's a very attractive 5 feet 4 inches tall blonde with a very nice 36 to 24-36 figure. In fact, she's hot. She also has a great personality and seems to get along with everyone she meets. It's very easy to like her, and I did like her a lot. In fact, over a short period of time, I fell in love with her in a big way. She is everything that most guys could ever want, and certainly more than I ever expected to find. But indeed, I did find her. She got to know me and fell in love with me too. Stranger things have happened, but I don't know what they could be. After 2 years in school, Karen realized she would not be achieving her goal of becoming an attorney, but she was still interested in legal work. So she applied for jobs as a legal secretary. She was eventually hired by one of the major brokerage firms, and she immediately took to the job. Within 2 months, we were married, and she continued to work and support us while I finished school. Through her hard work, dedication, and friendliness over the last 5 years, she has worked her way up and was transferred to the Chicago headquarters to be the assistant to the manager of the firm's legal department. I received my degree in computer science and decided that I could earn a very good living writing computer game programs. I received my degree in computer science and decided that I could earn a very good living writing computer game programs. I started my own business, and over the last several years, I have written numerous very popular computer games that you or your kids would certainly recognize. I have made a lot of money and really don't have to work very hard any longer. We have moved to Highland Park, a suburb of Chicago along Lake Michigan. Hard any longer. We have moved to Highland Park, a suburb of Chicago along Lake Michigan. Since we were both doing so well in our work, Karen and I have built a very comfortable life together, and we both work because we enjoy it, not because we have to. In an effort to keep from going crazy with activity, I secretly started another company in Milwaukee, about a 1-hour commute for me to investigate computer software fraud, CheatingWifeStories Incorporated. Through some confidential contacts at the Institute of Computer Technology, I started with a small list of clients, and that list has continued to grow by word-of-mouth advertising. CheatingWifeStories has a current customer list of about 150 clients, and at any point in time might be working on 5 or 6 projects. The companies that use our services are extremely happy with the work we do, and the profits are very lucrative. We grossed over $3 million last year. I hired a very competent office manager, Carrie, and contracted with a dozen or more computer geeks like myself to do the majority of the investigation work. We rotate them on the projects so that they do not become too familiar to the customer. The only actual employees of the company are Carrie and myself, and the investigators each get paid a percentage of the fee for the projects that they do for me. With the huge amount of profits being made in the software industry, the need for confidentiality and secrecy is quite extreme. So I have always maintained a level of anonymity. In fact, no one at the company knows me, not even Carrie, because I always wear a disguise to hide my true identity when I investigate. And because I wanted to keep my involvement a secret, I wore such a disguise when I hired Carrie. Over the years, I have become very good at developing new disguises to fool everyone. When I investigate a case, I get paid just like the rest of the investigation staff, except my pay goes to a separate account I have set up under an alias. As I said, the majority of the investigations are done by my contracted staff, but about once a quarter, I will take one of the jobs myself for the fun of it. Karen does not know about CSI, so I use the pretext of going to Milwaukee to meet with my game distributor to get away for a few days to do the investigation. Actually, all of my computer game business is done through the internet. For CSI Incorporated, though, I drive to the company's apartment in Milwaukee, park my Beamer in the garage, and put on my disguises. Then I drive a company car, currently a Buick, to the office to pick up the investigation materials and go wherever I need to go to do the job. Sometimes it is local, but sometimes it is in New York or Chicago or wherever. I finish the job and go back to Milwaukee, reverse the process, and go home. You are probably thinking that while I am doing all of this traveling, I am cheating, taking every opportunity to date some women and cheat on my wife. But nothing could be further home. You are probably thinking that while I am doing all of this traveling, I am cheating, taking every opportunity to date some women and cheat on my wife. But nothing could be further from the truth. I love my wife beyond my own capacity to understand and would never do anything to hurt her or my marriage. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Karen, and that is why I am writing this story. I had personally taken an investigation for Marcos Software to determine if one of their programmers was selling source code to a competitor. Jeff Marcos designed a program to track securities transactions, and I thought it would give me some insight into the work that Karen does, so I jumped on that investigation myself. The company is located in Oak Brook, another suburb of Chicago. Although it might be fun to hit some of the restaurants and clubs in my own stomping grounds while under disguise, who knew? Maybe I would encounter some friends I could toy with. Little did I know what I would really encounter and what I would be investigating. I had all of the information needed from Carrie, my office manager, and I set myself up in the Drake Hotel in Oak Brook, only a short drive from Marcos Software. I arrived at Marcos and after a short wait was greeted by Jeff Marcos. He was tall, dark, and handsome, a replica of the traditional pattern for a man that women would find attractive. Jeff was also very outgoing and friendly and had a presence about him that put me at ease as well, and I really found myself liking the man. He invited me into his office and talked to me about what he suspected and how he thought I might approach the investigation. He set me up with everything I needed right there in his office and was telling all of his people that I was a special projects manager with one of their customers there to work out the bugs on the program application with my company. I thought it would work out quite well, so we went with that approach. On the second day I was there, I discovered that Jeff's suspicions were correct. One of his people, a programmer named Tom, was selling source code and exactly how he was doing it. While I was writing up my report, Jeff's cell phone started to ring. It was sitting on his desk beside me, and Jeff was not in the room. So I glanced over at it to my utter surprise. The caller ID showed Karen my wife's cell phone number. My first reaction was to grab the phone and surprise her, figuring that somehow her firm was using Jeff's software, and wouldn't she be shocked to find out that I was working here? But of course, then all my efforts to keep CSEFI Incorporated a secret and my identity a secret would be lost. So I just sat there, chuckling to myself about the irony of the whole thing. A short time later, Jeff returned to his office and answered my wife's call. My chuckling soon turned to a broken-hearted, sick feeling when I heard him say, "Karen, I am so glad you called me. I had a wonderful time last night. Can you meet me at Morton's for dinner at 6:30 p.m.? Okay, I will see you there, and after we will go to your place for dessert. Bye, sexy." Well, you could have knocked me out of my chair with a feather. I was so stunned that I am sure I looked like a zombie, and I felt like my breakfast was going to end up on the desk in front of me. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I excused myself to go to the men's room and sat in the stall until the beating of my heart settled down and I could actually think again. How could Karen do this? I thought she loved me like I loved her, but she was meeting Jeff again tonight, and he had said he enjoyed last night. The things he had said to her were not things you would say to someone unless you had had sex with them. How could this be? I just did not understand at all. I had no clue, no inkling at all that Karen had been cheating on me. Our sex life was great. She never complained that I was not meeting her sexual needs. I was dumbfounded. I just couldn't understand, and all the while my heart was just breaking. I was dumbfounded. I just couldn't understand, and all the while my heart was just breaking. How could she do this to me who she loved? Did she love me at all? What was my marriage? Was it real or was it a sham? I have to tell you, I thought right then and there that my world was coming to an end. All I had worked for was for us, Karen and I, and now I just didn't know anymore. When I had settled down enough to not lose it, I decided that I needed to verify my suspicions and not go on a little bit of evidence that I had so far. Once I had all the facts, or as many facts as I could gather, I would put a plan of action into place. I went back into the office with Jeff and sat down to finish up the project so I could dedicate the next couple of days to find out exactly what was going on. I had a very difficult time sitting there because I wanted to attack him, but knew that would be a mistake. To make matters worse, Jeff had this big grin on his face and apologized to me for the way he had talked in front of me. He said, "I am sorry that I said those things in front of you, but that woman is so hot. I met her a couple of weeks ago at the office of one of my customers, and we hit it off from the start. At the moment, I hated him, but I could understand that Karen would like him because he was very nice to talk to." He continued to say she told me that the next time her husband, she called him Computer Boy, he laughed, left town on business, she would call me and we would get together. Well, yesterday she called, and who could turn away a beautiful woman like hers? I was dying inside, but I would get together. Well, yesterday she called, and who could turn away a beautiful woman like hers? I was dying inside, but I held it together. He told me she told me that she married Computer Boy because she knew he would end up rich, and that would give her a great life, and she could still dupe gorgeous men like me. Again he laughed. I've asked her if she didn't love him, and she said she did, but she also loved having great sex on the side. I couldn't believe how much information I gathered from him that morning without him, knowing who I was and certainly not knowing what I was going to do. There was really no doubt in my mind that it was my Karen he was talking about because of the Computer Boy comment, and it seemed quite evident that she had cheated on me with him and apparently with others over the course of our marriage. I realized that I knew a lot, but I would need more proof, and then I would put a plan into action. I told Jeff that I needed to leave for the rest of the day and would be back the following morning. When I got to my car, I called Karen on my cell phone. She was so sweet and loving, telling me how much she missed me. It made me want to throw up again, knowing what a sham it was. I asked her what her plans were for the day, and she said she was working all day and would possibly go out to dinner with some friends. I told her that it would probably be another day or two before I got home, and then I would call her later tonight. She said not to call because she didn't know what time she would be home from going out with her friends. She really just didn't want to be interrupted while she was having sex with Jeff. I was sick. I knew I had to catch her cheating, and I knew just how to do it. On my way home, I stopped off at the electronics store and bought 5 of the new mini wireless surveillance cameras and a modem so I could monitor the kitchen, the living room, the family room, the master bedroom, and our guest bedroom. I didn't know where she would take him to dupe him, but I wanted it covered anywhere they went. When I got home, I turned off the security camera with the remote, drove into the garage so no one would notice the strange car in the driveway, went into the house, and rewound the tape so my arrival wouldn't be evident. I installed all of the surveillance cameras and fed the output to the modem and recorder that I set up in my basement workshop. That way, I could dial in to access the output online and would be able to monitor the whole house without anyone knowing. Satisfied with my work, I left the house, got into my car, and backed out of the driveway. I went around the block, and as I was driving by, I reactivated the security cameras with the remote. Unless she looked very closely at the security tape and noticed the time breaks, she would never know anything happened at the house. And Karen never looked at the tapes anyway. That was my thing. By the time I had all of that done, I was starting to feel a little hungry, so I went to a little pizza place near the hotel and ate. I only had a couple of beers because I wanted to be pretty sharp as I monitored what happened at home. After dinner, I drove to the hotel and set up my only had a couple of beers because I wanted to be pretty sharp as I monitored what happened at home. After dinner, I drove to the hotel and set up my computer so I could see what happened and waited. Even after all I had heard, I was hoping that this was all a big mistake, and it wasn't her, and she wasn't cheating on me, and she wasn't only in it for the lifestyle. I heard so badly, I finally broke down and cried. Around 8 p.m., I saw her car pull into the garage, and I could easily see that she was alone. My heart did a jump, thinking maybe nothing was going to happen. But a couple of minutes later, the security camera was shut off, and I couldn't see the driveway anymore. I switched over to the kitchen camera and saw her come in. She was wearing one of my favorite outfits, a short black dress, rather low cut with spaghetti straps to hold it up. I loved her in that outfit. Until that very moment, I knew she would never wear that outfit to go out with her friends for dinner. She wore that outfit to turn on some guy, usually me, but tonight not me. Tears started to stream down my face again as I realized finally that this was no mistake. Karen was not who or what I thought she was. I didn't have long to wait until Jeff walked into the kitchen. She apparently had left the garage door open, and he drove his car into my spot in the garage so neighbors would not see his car. As soon as he walked into the kitchen, Karen melted into his arms, and he gave her a kiss, all the time rubbing her back. I could see herself into him. She broke the kiss and suggested, "Why don't we adjourn to the bedroom?" She grabbed a bottle of wine and 2 wine glasses as they left the kitchen. I switched to the living room camera and just saw them pass through on the way up to the bedrooms. I don't know why, but I was thinking, I hope at least she will dupe him in the guest room and not in our bed. How utterly ridiculous is that thought? But I did have it. That isn't what happened, though. When I switched to the guest room camera, there was nothing there, so I switched to our bedroom, and they were sitting on the bed, kissing. Karen opened the bottle of wine and poured each of them a glass. "To a handsome man and great sex," she said. He raised his glass. They touched their glasses and drank about half of the glass and set them down. Jeff stood up, and Karen opened his pants. I could see the smile on her face. I just couldn't believe this was happening before my very eyes. And no, I didn't want this to happen. If this had any hint of being the first time, I wouldn't have been here monitoring it. I would have been home stopping it. But there was every indication it wasn't the first time. So what good would it have done to stop at this one time? She would only have done it again, a different time. I needed my proof, and then I would figure out what I was going to do. Well, everything I didn't want to happen did happen. Oh, Jeff, that was the best I have ever had, too. Last night was great, but this was unbelievable. I love the way you play me. I just love it. I may never let Computer Boy dupe me again. Then she laughed. Can we do this again tomorrow night? Mr. Inadequate One won't be home for a couple of days yet. At that moment, my heart broke. Up until she said that, I figured she loved me but just wanted more sex than I was giving her. Up until she said that, I thought I would confront her, and she would stop because she loved me. But with that comment, I knew she really didn't love me and didn't give a second thought to scorning me in front of her lover. At that moment, I knew our marriage would be over because I could not live with someone who didn't love me and respect me no matter how much I loved her. She clearly did not love or respect me. My love died. I didn't will love me and respect me no matter how much I loved her. She clearly did not love or respect me. My love died. I didn't will it to happen. I never would have dreamed it could happen, but it died. I turned everything off. I had all of the proof I needed, and frankly, I didn't want to see any more. I don't know what else they did. I don't know if he spent the night or left right away. I didn't need to know any more, and how can you break a heart any worse than mine was broken at that time? My love had died, but I still had to mourn its loss. I just turned everything off, went to bed and cried until it was time to get up in the morning. I got up and took one look at myself in the mirror and knew I was going to have a bad day. My eyes were swollen. I was a mess. But I knew what I had to do today. I had been thinking about how to end our marriage, and frankly, how to destroy her like she made me hurt. Yes, I know it is immature to seek revenge, but I honestly felt I needed to destroy her for my healing to begin. I didn't hold any major animosity for Jeff either, but it wouldn't be right for him to sleep with another man's wife, break up their marriage, and get off unscathed. I would have my revenge, and then maybe I could put it all behind me. I went to Jeff's office and put my plan into action. It was going to be simple for me, computer boy, to make it all happen. I would not leave a clue that it was me that did it either. I really didn't even feel like hurting him physically anymore. I just wanted to get my revenge, and the price would be high for both of them. Physically anymore, I just wanted to get my revenge, and the price would be high for both of them. When Jeff went to the boardroom for a staff meeting, I found his keys. I went and had copies made so I could get into his house where he had archived copies of his source code. I was already allowed access to his computer system, but I hacked into his security files and got all of his and his programmer's passwords. I wrote a little virus program that would delete his source code. It would seek out all copies of his program on every drive on his network, and that included computers he had hooked up at home and all of his customers. I knew when I activated that program, all passwords would be changed so no one could get into the system, and that all copies of his precious program would be destroyed forever, and so would he. Then, I hacked into my wife's computer at work, and using her password to access the tracking program, I transferred $200,000 out of my business account into Jeff's account. Then transferred it again to an account that I set up in his name in the Grand Cayman Islands. Then, I went back in and sloppily erased the trail to the money. It would be difficult, but a good analyst would eventually be able to track the money. I was sure of it. I don't know if Jeff and Karen got back together again on Wednesday night, but I assume they did. It really didn't matter to me anymore. Thursday morning, I triggered my virus program to run. Friday morning at 9 a.m., I handed my report to Jeff on the software code theft and told him that CSFI would bill him for my services. I knew that was one bill that would never be paid, but I didn't care. I left his office with him telling me, "It has been a pleasure to know you," and I thought, if you only knew, you wouldn't say that. But I smiled and shook his hand and said, "Good luck." He was going to need it. I went to his home, let myself in with the keys I had copied and found all archived copies of his program. I took them with me and headed to Milwaukee. Once I got to my apartment there, I lit a fire in the fireplace and destroyed them all. I wanted my revenge on him, but I have my honor also and didn't plan on making any profit personally with his programming. I stayed there on Thursday night and waited for it to hit the fan. Well, how did it all play out? Friday morning, I went to the office to let Carrie know I had finished the project and that Marco's software could be built. She told me she would take care of it and my fee would be forwarded to my account. I drove home and walked into the house to find a crying Karen. She told me that she had been sent home pending an investigation into securities fraud involving money transferred out of our business account. I acted shocked and asked her to fill me in on the details. She told me all she knows about money being transferred to a Jeff Marcos, and that was it. I asked her if she knew Jeff Marcos, and she said she had met him at the office a couple of weeks ago, but that she really didn't know him and had no idea what had happened at Marcos Software. There was lots of shock, the fan at 9 a.m. when everyone was working their little off. All of a sudden, everything went dead. None of the programmers could get into the system. Jeff couldn't get into the system, and the phones were ringing off the hook because none of their customers could use the tracking program. I didn't get to see any of this, but I knew it was happening, just as I described. Of course, I learned later that Jeff had fired Tom for stealing source code, and after everything went dead, he blamed Tom for that too. Oh well, Tom was not innocent, so he can pay the price too. You know, I am a programmer, and anyone who messes with source code deserves to be penalized. Oh well, Tom was not innocent, so he can pay the price too. You know, I am a programmer, and anyone who messes with source code deserves to be penalized. They traced the $200,000 to Jeff's account, and he denied knowing anything about it and accused Karen of doing it. She denied knowing anything about it and accused Jeff of doing it. During the investigation, I kept my cool until Jeff let it slip that they had had a sexual relationship. Then I confronted Karen and she admitted it all, crying that she was so sorry and asking if I would please forgive her. She said it was the one and only time she had ever done anything like that and only did it this one time because she was so lonely with me gone longer than usual. I knew that was a lie, but I didn't even challenge it. It didn't matter anymore. Jeff was found guilty of securities fraud and fined $50,000, but he also saw 6 months of jail time. I heard he was out in 3 months for good behavior, but of course, when he got out, he didn't have his program or his company anymore. The last I knew, he was working as a programmer for one of his competitors, and ironically, Tom worked for the same place. Karen was fired from her job. I told her I couldn't get past her cheating on me and had her served with divorce papers. I invoked the infidelity clause of our marriage contract. Remember, I am a computer geek. In her settlement, she was only entitled to 10% of our net worth. She was fined $50,000 for securities fraud and was given 3 years probation. She was lucky that she did not go to prison, but she only had $150,000 left to live on. Her share was $200,000. She couldn't even buy a decent house in the Chicago area with that much money, so she ended up moving to Milwaukee and became a waitress in a bar. I am sure she will do well since she still has that sexy body, but she won't live the good life she had with me, computer boy. And I hope she always remembers how much I loved her and how much it hurts when she thinks of me. I sold the house in Highland Park and moved into the apartment in Milwaukee. I still had $1.8 million from our joint funds and another $1.2 million in the CSI account. I decided it was time that I enjoyed my wealth for a change. I sold the company for another $4 million and knew it was time that Carrie got to know her real boss. She said she knew it was I all along, no matter what disguise I used. Gotta love that woman, and I do, often and well. Neither of us works full-time anymore. We are just enjoying the fruits of our labor. We got married soon after my divorce became final, and we are expecting our first child this coming December. When I feel the urge to actually do some work, I write programs. The story is a complex and emotionally charged tale of betrayal and revenge. It portrays a deep exploration of personal transformation in the face of infidelity using technology as a key element in the plot. The protagonist's journey from a betrayed husband to a vengeful figure raises important questions about morality and justice, making it a thought-provoking narrative. Story 2. When I first met my wife, we were head over heels in love with each other, and both of us knew almost instantly that we were meant to be together. My wife ended up getting pregnant while we were still dating, and we figured the right thing to do would be to get married. Everything felt natural for the first 5 years of our relationship. We were happily married, and we had a child together that we both loved dearly. I had a great job, and she stayed at home and took care of our child. Before we got together, she was actually engaged to another man, from what I was told. She broke things off with him a couple of weeks before I met her. She told me it just didn't feel right, and she didn't want to be with him, so she broke up with him and moved out of his house. After that, she went out to a bar with her best friend, and that's where she met me. I always thought the timing of it was perfect. I thought it was fate. Had she not broken things off with that guy, we would have never been together, and I wouldn't have had the perfect life that I did. I travel quite a bit for my job, which was never much of an issue with us. At the most, I would be gone from home for 2 or 3 days a month, and they were always weekdays. I was adamant with my employer that I wanted to be able to spend the weekends with my family so we could make memories together. The first instance that I noticed something was off was when I was on a short work trip. I had to fly into Montana for a meeting with a client, but they ended up canceling at the last minute while I was there due to a family emergency. I decided I'd take the extra time and surprise my family with a weekend trip to the beach or something. I got on the next flight home and called my wife. When I arrived at the airport, she didn't answer the first couple of times that I called. That was very unlike her. She would always be by her phone, and not answering was strange. Eventually, she picked up the phone to see what was going on. She seemed annoyed that I called her. She rarely ever had that tone with me, especially when I was out of town. I asked her if everything was okay, and she kind of snapped at me to tell me that it was. I told her that I was in an Uber on my way home, and she seemed shocked. I heard a lot of shuffling around in the background, but at the time I assumed she was moving around. I never thought anything suspicious was happening. She got off the phone with me, and when I arrived home, she was very disheveled. Her cheeks were pink like she had been running around, and she was wearing some pajama shorts and a sweater that was on inside out. I knew that being alone with the kid was sometimes exhausting, but it didn't seem like that was the issue. I knew that being alone with the kid was sometimes exhausting, but it didn't seem like that was the issue. I asked her if everything was all right, and she told me that it was. She was just surprised to see me so early. I told her about my plan to spend the weekend at the beach, and she immediately rushed off to start packing so we could leave in the morning. She seemed relieved to get away from me. I unpacked my work stuff and went to pack some garments for the trip, and I found a black sock that I didn't think was mine. I picked it up and showed it to my wife, asking what it was. It was a suspicious thing to find. She was confused about what I was asking, swearing that the sock was mine. I'm not going to lie. She was the one who handled all of the laundry in the house. She bought a lot of my clothes and probably knew my wardrobe better than I did. I told her that I didn't think it was mine, but she was steadfast in saying that it was mine. Eventually, I gave up and believed what she said. Several months passed, and I didn't notice anything else going on. I had completely forgotten about the sock thing by that point. One day, I came home from work early, and I found my wife in our bathtub crying. There was no water in the bath, and she was fully clothed, just hiding in the bathtub crying. I immediately rushed over to her and asked her what was going on, checking on her to make sure she was okay. She was almost nonverbal and unable to communicate what was happening to me. I was freaking out and rushed around the house to check on our kid to make sure they were all right. I called her mom and asked what was going on. She didn't know either. My first instinct was that somebody had died, but when I spoke to her mother, the person who would have likely elicited that reaction out of her, I started to think something else was going on. I checked our security camera footage to make sure nobody broke into the house, but I didn't find anything there. The only thing that was left for me to do was to look at her phone and see if there was any sign of what was going on. It wasn't something I was doing to try to catch her in anything. My wife was hysterical and crying, and I needed to figure out what was going on so I could help her. She had it with her in the bathtub, and I went over to her to grab it from her hands. She put up a little bit of a fight giving it to me. I unlocked it, and the screen that was open to was a message exchange between her and a man we will call Tim. The messages were all very romantic in nature. They were telling each other that they loved each other, that they missed each other, and how excited they were to be together when I went away the following week. I didn't know what to do. My wife was hysterically crying in the bathtub, and I cared about her, and that was heartbreaking to see. But I had also just found out that she was cheating on me. That didn't even explain why she was crying the way that she was. Their messages didn't end with a breakup or anything like that. While I was looking, a message from her best friend, let's call her Carol, came through. I didn't read the message, but I called her right away and asked her if she knew about what was going on. I told her that I knew all about Tim, and I just needed to know why my wife was crying in the bathtub. Carol told me that Tim was my wife's ex-fiance. They had reconnected and were seeing each other. The reason my wife was crying was because Tim had died. I felt so many different emotions at that time. It's honestly so unexplainable how I felt. I was angry and heartbroken about the affair, but I felt for my wife because I did love her, but I was so mad at her. I wanted to reach out and help her, but I also wanted to be as far away from her as I possibly could. I told Carol that she needed to come over and tend to my wife because I didn't think I could. I walked out of the bathroom, and my wife yelled after me, begging for me to come back and be with her. I packed a bag for our kids so we could go stay at my parents' house for a few days. They didn't need to be around my wife while she was mourning. It would likely be pretty jarring for them. When Carol came over, I left. She tried to explain to me what was happening before I could leave, but I didn't want to listen to her either. Carol was my wife's best friend, but we were on good terms. I would joke around with Carol, and I invited her out for dinner and drinks with us all the time. I felt betrayed that she even lied to me about the affair. I explained everything to my parents when we were at their house, and they gave me some really good advice about the time. I felt betrayed that she even lied to me about the affair. I explained everything to my parents when we were at their house, and they gave me some really good advice about the matter. I felt bad about my decision to walk away from her, but they told me that she already made that decision for me. Even though I knew she was mourning, I couldn't be with her. She betrayed our marriage, and the only thing left for me to do was leave her. She made her choice, and I wasn't responsible for her emotions after she hurt me. I gave her the weekend at home alone to deal with everything she had to. When I returned the following week to get some of my belongings, she begged for the chance to explain herself to me and work on the problems. I told her that there was no explaining that she was telling another man that she loved him and sleeping with him behind my back. However, I did find out that she actually was still engaged to her fiancé when we met. She and I had been dating for an entire month before she broke things off with him. I was supposed to just be a fling, but then he found out about me and they broke up. I don't know if she thought that was going to make the situation any better, but it certainly didn't. I knew then that she had been a liar throughout the entirety of our marriage. I told her that I was leaving her and that there was no sway in my mind on the matter. I knew that she was still very emotional from Tim's death, but that wasn't any of my concern. I started filing for divorce, and as I was doing that, so many people from my life reached out to me and tried to make me out as a villain. My wife had been telling everybody that I left her after she found out somebody close to her had died. She was withholding the fact that she found out the man she was cheating on me with died. I made sure to clarify that to everybody who reached out to me so they knew the truth. I wasn't going to let her lie about me and make everybody we knew think I was some awful man. After that, everybody saw how manipulative she could be, and from what I understand, she lost a lot of friends in our town. The only person who stuck by her was Carol, who was the only other person who knew about the affair when it was happening. We ended up getting divorced, and I kept the house and all of our assets. She moved in with her parents and comes by on the weekends to see our child. All of our assets. She moved in with her parents and comes by on the weekends to see our child. From the perspective of relationships and family dynamics, this story demonstrates that deceit and infidelity can severely undermine the foundations of marriage. The intervention of a third party in family relationships, especially under tragic circumstances, further complicates this situation and can lead to serious consequences. Story 3. My girlfriend and I both met during our junior year of college. We went to a small school, and it was hard not to notice everyone on campus. I'd seen her around from time to time, and I thought she was attractive. However, I'd never had a reason to go talk to her. We both ended up in the same writing class during the first semester of our junior year. As soon as I saw her, I sat down next to her and struck up a conversation. We ended up hitting it off, and we workshopped a lot of things together for the class. A few weeks into the semester, I made a move on her, and she seemed glad that I did. The first summer that we were apart was difficult because we weren't used to long distance. We lived about 4 hours away from each other, so we weren't able to see each other very often. We talked every day, and we ended up making a couple of trips to see each other over the summer. When the fall semester of our senior year started, we were very happy to finally be back together. Everything was great between us when we started. I didn't notice anything strange going on between us, so I was maybe a little oblivious to some things. In hindsight, I can see how she wanted to hang out with me less and was using her course load as an excuse. I had seen her schedule at the beginning of the semester, and she had a relatively light course load. She had a job, but she only worked at it part-time. There was definitely time for her to go on more dates with me or spend more time with me. She just didn't want to. Whenever we were together, she would be on her phone a lot, and she was often pretty secretive about what she was doing on it. Things continued like that all the way until the spring semester. I had brought up a couple of times how I was feeling, but she assured me both times that she wanted to be with me, and that she was just busy or stressed. One night, I texted her and asked her if I could come over to her room and spend the night with her. It was a Friday night, and I knew that she didn't work in the morning, and I just wanted to be with my girlfriend. She replied a few minutes later and told me that she had a migraine from looking at a computer for too long and was about to go to sleep. I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw a notification that my girlfriend was online. She told me she was going to sleep because she was looking at a screen all day and had a headache. I figured that she was lying to me about that and just didn't want to be with me because she was scrolling on Instagram. It was painful to have that realization, but I think it was something that I kind of needed. I was a little upset about it, so my roommate asked me about what was going on. I explained everything to him, and he told me that it sounded like she was over the relationship already. Then he casually mentioned that she was probably already talking to someone else. I didn't see the correlation right away, but he encouraged me to look into it. I didn't really think much about it right away, but after a few days of stewing on what he said, I decided that maybe it would be worth looking into. She really didn't want to spend a lot of time with me, and she was on her phone quite a bit, being secretive about it. It made sense that she could have been hiding something from me. I looked online for some clues about how to tell if someone's cheating and evaluated my relationship against those. I took a mental note of what her snap score was, if she was online after she told me she was going to sleep, and how often she was turning me down when I asked if we could go on dates or be together. From everything I found, signs were pointing to her possibly being with someone else. One weekend, we made plans to go to a concert together. I bought the tickets and everything. She backed out at the last minute and told me that she had to work. She never worked on Saturdays, so right away, it seemed like a lie to me. I told her that I was okay with it and that I would bring my roommate along to the concert with me instead. I told him what happened, and he got it in my head that she was canceling to be with another guy. I let him convince me of that, and I was pretty frustrated and anxious about everything. I checked her snap score while we were on our way to the concert and saw that it had been increasing while she was supposed to be at work. I could also tell through the maps on Snapchat that she was at a restaurant in the city, not at her job near our college campus. My roommate decided that instead of going to the concert, we were going to go see what was going on in that restaurant. When we got there, she was clearly on a date with a guy. They were sitting next to each other, and he had his arms around her while they were laughing and getting very cozy. We even saw them kiss a few times that I was heartbroken to see that everything my roommate had been saying was true. She had been cheating on me and lying to me throughout the year. I didn't know how long it had been going on, but she had been behaving a certain way for a while. While we were waiting, my roommate started looking through her social media profiles to try to figure out who the guy was. He put the pieces together relatively quickly and found out that the guy she was on the date with was her stepbrother. I knew that her parents were divorced and her mother had married pretty hastily during the spring semester of our junior year. However, I had never met her family. We hadn't been dating for that long, and her family never visited for family weekend or anything like that on campus. I was shocked that she was cheating on me with her stepbrother of all people. I told my roommate that I was going to confront her the following day and end everything with us. He was the one who convinced me to go about it a different way. He helped me plan how I was going to get revenge on them both. Her family didn't come to visit for small things, but I knew that they were coming in for our graduation ceremony. I pretended like everything was normal with us up until then. Every year, the day before our graduation ceremony, our university held a large banquet for the students and their family members. My girlfriend and I had planned on attending that together with our families so we could all meet each other. Everything was going very well at first. Everybody was getting along, and I was honestly drinking a little too much wine. The president of the university was scheduled to give a speech at the dinner, so there was a live microphone on the stage in the room. I was feeling a little confident, so I made my way over to the microphone. The faculty around me were a little surprised, but they didn't stop me right away. They probably should have. I started off by congratulating all of my fellow classmates on making it through the year to get to graduation. I turned my attention to my girlfriend, and many people in the room turned and looked at her while I was speaking. At first, it seemed like I was just talking about how lovely she was. Then I mentioned how I was surprised to see her on a date with her stepbrother. The room went silent when I brought that up. Everybody was taking in the gravity of what I'd said. They were both shaking their heads and denying it. I explained that I saw them kissing each other and how she was cheating on me with him throughout the entire year. People were pulling out their phones to record what I was saying, but I was ushered away from the microphone by one of the faculty members before I could get into a lot of the details. However, her mother and stepfather were asking her a lot of questions, and she was trying to answer them. My parents pulled me out of the room and asked me about why I would embarrass her that way. I was just laughing, and I ended up leaving. My girlfriend texted me later that night and told me about how much I humiliated her in front of the entire class. I didn't really care. She had been lying to me and treating me like I was garbage for an entire year, and I finally found out why. I thought she deserved to be a little bit embarrassed about everything. Our graduation ceremony was the following day, and people were still talking about the dinner. I could see that my girlfriend was embarrassed and could feel people talking about her behind her back throughout the entire ceremony. I really think I ruined that for her. That was a few years ago, but I am now over what happened. I realize that not everybody is going to be the way that she was. However, I am now very aware of signs of cheating, and I keep an eye out for that in my relationships. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.